Everyone, for the medical cannabis, the left is the first draft and the right is the most recent draft, the second draft. And there's also an advertisement here to take the Mason County Community Health Assessment Survey, so if you'd like to do that. All right, we're gonna get started.
Mason County Joint Planning Committees and Having Sessions. Roll call.
John Hudson. Here. John Betts. Here. Leslie Meyer.
Here.
David Reed.
Here.
Sylvia Rosser. Yes, sir. Lindsay Phillips. Rick Lawrence. Doug Lewis. George Larger. I'm here. Michael Clark. Here.
Okay, we got quorum.
Yep. We have quorum.
All right, before I ask for a motion for the minutes for May 1st, regular meeting, is there any additions, corrections, or deletions? Hearing none, do I have a motion to accept the minutes from May 1st, regular meeting?
So moved.
John?
I'll second.
Kirby? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Okay. Old business, matter of record, findings of fact, zoning map amendment, Chad Ziegler, one lot, 2349 US 68. Before I ask for a motion to approve that, is there any additions, corrections, or deletions? Hearing none, do I have a motion to accept for a matter of record?
No motion.
Okay, John? Please second. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed?
Real quick, before we move on, I'd like to get you guys' signatures on that. Please and thank you.
Dave.
All right.
Okay, under new business, public hearing, zoning text amendment proposal for medical cannabis businesses.
All right. We need a motion to enter public hearing.
All right, before we go do that, I'd like to make a statement. This meeting is for the zoning map or text amendment proposal. It's not to determine whether it is morally right or wrong for the state of Kentucky to sell medical cannabis. That's already been decided. You missed that meeting. So, the other thing is, it's not this board's charge to determine whether it will be sold in Mason County or Maysville. That goes to the commissioners in the court. So that's, save you another stand-up. Otherwise, you'll just be asked to sit back down because that's not what this board's to hear tonight. So there's a lot of restrictions and regulation tied to this legislation. So even if we do approve a particular zone, not all of that zone may be usable based on the restrictions that the state has put in. So just keep that in mind. All right. Do I have a motion to go out of regular meeting into a public hearing?
I'll make that motion.
Okay, Kirby. Do I have a second? John? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Okay, we're in a public hearing. George?
Okay. Everyone, welcome to the one public hearing we have tonight. As stated, it's for a proposed zoning text amendment for medical cannabis businesses. At this time, I would like to provide evidence that this public hearing was noticed as required by the state. There was an ad in the paper, and here is a copy of the digital tear sheet that was used to generate that ad in the letter of intent. It's really small, but it's right there. All members of the public will be given the opportunity to voice their opinions on this matter. We require that you give your name and your address for the record. Is there anyone present who thinks that they will want to speak on this matter? Anyone? Well, if necessary, I can sign you in when you go to speak if you change your mind. So at this time, in lieu of having an applicant, since there is no applicant, I will just go ahead and talk about the proposal. As stated, there are copies of the 2 drafts of the medical cannabis zoning text amendment proposal there at the end of the table. On this side is the original draft, and right next to the mayor is the most recent draft that I've provided the commission with today. Y'all, how would you like for me to proceed? Do you want to talk about my staff report? Do you want to talk about the new proposal?
Yes.
Do you want to talk about the changes from the first proposal to the
Let's
second proposal?
talk about the changes.
Okay, so I'm not sure if I can copy of yours. Yes. Well, anyway, so originally I didn't add any definitions. There are definitions on the back page. Because for some reason in KRS there weren't really good definitions, but in KAR there were. So I created those using what was in KAR. Do y'all have any questions about those? For the sake of this ordinance, and I can read them all out if you'd like. Why don't we go ahead and do that? So, medical cannabis business, an entity licensed by the Commonwealth of Kentucky as a cultivator, processor, producer, safety compliance facility, or dispensary for the purpose of growing, processing, testing, and selling medical cannabis or medical cannabis products. Cultivator is a licensed medical cannabis business engaged in the planting, growing, raising, cultivating, harvesting, trimming, delivering, transporting, transferring, storing, supplying, or selling of raw plant material and other related supplies. Processor is a licensed medical cannabis business engaged in the processing of raw plant material and medical cannabis and medical cannabis products, which includes the receiving, acquiring, purchasing, possessing, handling, processing, preparing, extracting, refining, manufacturing, manipulating, blending, packaging, labeling, storing, transporting, transferring, supplying, or selling of medical cannabis products. A producer is a licensed medical cannabis business engaged in a combination of cultivation and processing. For the purpose of this ordinance, a medical cannabis business will be considered a producer only if both cultivation and processing of medical cannabis occur at the same location. Under Kentucky law, under this bill, you can be a producer and you can have one cultivation. You can be a cultivator in one location, and you can be a processor in another location. Or you can do them both at the same time, but you only have one of each. For the purpose of this ordinance, for where you can do that, under this proposal, we're only going to consider the producer if you're doing it in one location. Otherwise, you're just a cultivator and a processor at different locations. Does that make sense? Okay. Safety compliance facility, a licensed medical cannabis business that provides testing services to other licensed medical cannabis businesses in the Commonwealth of Kentucky by collecting, handling, receiving, and conducting tests on medical cannabis samples. I think that's pretty straightforward. Dispensary, a licensed medical cannabis business engaged in the dispensing, selling, or delivering of medical cannabis to registered qualified patients, visiting qualified patients, or designated caregivers in the Commonwealth of Kentucky, which includes the acquiring, possessing, transporting, and transferring of medical cannabis or medical cannabis products. Are there any questions? Really, most of that was cobbled together from KAR, so that's pretty straightforward. So one thing when I emailed you all the packets that I mentioned is that Michael and I were very lucky to have gotten a legal memo from another county where a couple of attorneys really analyzed the law and discussed it in the memo. And one of their conclusions was that conditional uses were probably problematic. This board doesn't deal with conditional uses, but the boards of adjustment do. Essentially, a conditional use means that you can maybe conduct a land use in a specific zone. And the reason it's a maybe is because there might be things about it that are objectionable to people, the surrounding area, and so the board can put conditions on them. Well, if you get a notice in the mail or you see in the newspaper that someone wants to operate a medical cannabis facility, what do you suppose the objections at the public hearing are going to be about that? It's probably not going to be about parking or operating hours. People aren't going to want to just be around it because of, it's a drug. A lot of people still feel that way. So that's why I converted pretty much all of the conditional uses, mostly to, they're prohibited. A few of them went to permitted. The table, as you can see, that would be added to the health services table that already exists in the ordinance. Generally speaking, cultivators, processors, and producers are only allowed in industrial zones. And I've got the zoning map up there. We can shut off the lights and we can talk about where those are located. Safety compliance facilities, those are like lab settings, so anywhere that would be appropriate, those are permitted, such as professional office 1, and C, rural community. Let's see. Yeah, and then dispensaries are pretty much permitted just about anywhere where pharmacies are permitted. So those are your general business B1, B2 highway business, B3 neighborhood business, D1 downtown business, and C rural community. One of the main reasons I went from conditional to prohibited for most of these is, aside from dispensaries, all of these medical cannabis businesses are required to be closed to the public, and they have very strict regulations about access. So having something that's supposed to be closed to the public, like if you wanted to grow this, you wanted to be a cultivator, in a business zone, a commercial zone, probably really isn't conducive and should be limited to an industrial zoning classification. Does that make sense? Okay. Do y'all have any questions about this so far?
So it's going to be allowed in A2, I1, and I2 for a cultivator?
And I3, yes.
And I3, yeah.
And it's noteworthy that cultivators, any of these businesses have to be in enclosed, lockable facilities. So even though you could grow it on A2 land, people think of it as an agricultural use, you can't do it outside. You can do it in a greenhouse. It has to be in a locked, closed facility, meaning it can't even grow in the ground with a building around it. I didn't add any extraneous regulations. Because the state has gone well above the call of duty when it comes to regulating these. For example, dispensaries, they have mandated the operating hours for dispensaries, 8 a.m. to 8 p.m. Most of the things that the boards of adjustments would put as conditions on conditional use permits are already covered in the regulations because they are so heavily regulated. I mean, you all went to David Pike's training, a few weeks ago. He even said, the bill is that thick, so he didn't even wade into the details of it. So really, at this moment, the proposal is just the table and then these definitions that'll go in the definitions at the back. Do y'all have any questions about the different zoning classifications?
What's the reasoning behind not allowing processor in A2?
Because it's more of an industrial land use.
Okay.
It's more of like a light industrial land use.
And not allowing cultivating in K1 because that's the agricultural building.
Well, the thing about A1, and this is something we talked about at the last meeting when we had a zoning public hearing, A1 is designed to be a placeholder. Really, before anything significant happens in A1 zones, it should be rezoned to whatever is sought, commercial, residential, industrial. The thing about those growth areas is you kind of don't want something significant there showing up because that's going to determine what that entire area is going to be. you have a big swath of A1 and someone wants to put a shopping mall there, you've pretty much determined that that's gonna be commercial.
George?
Can I ask a question?
Yeah, go ahead.
Wait,
You gotta be
Please
sworn
identify
in.
yourself and you gotta be sworn.
My name is Michelle Young Crawford, and
Let's swear you in first. Do you swear or otherwise affirm to tell the truth? Please say I do.
I do.
All right, please introduce yourself.
My name is Michelle Crawford, and I just have a question. If I have a farm, could I be a cultivator?
Is your farm on A2 land?
I don't know what that means. I live in Orangeburg,
Right, so.
way out Orangeburg.
All right, so I should probably turn off the lights so that we can see. Do you guys mind if I do that?
No.
So I'm gonna turn off.
I've been working. Been farming.
8 years ago, I still can't. Okay, so, I don't know if you all can see this, but anything that's uncolored out in the county, that's A2 land. So if you have A2 land, then as long as you follow all the regulations that the state requires of you, then you could be a cultivator under this proposal.
Thank you.
And A2 is agricultural for anyone who doesn't know. Do y'all have any specific questions about the zoning classification? Because I just have the E2, the R1.
Can I have an example of A1 zone, just for my own nosiness? Because I'm not.
Yes. A1 are these big green swaths
Okay.
through here.
Okay.
Those are earmarked as growth areas for the city of Maysville.
Thank you.
Traditionally, in our zoning classification, like I said, there's not a whole lot that's wholesale permitted there because again, and a lot of stuff that is actually conditional use there because, once you start, it's like out here, we kind of rezoned a lot of this all at once. You almost want to rezone large swaths of it and determine this is going to be an industrial area, this is going to be residential, this is going to be commercial, or for instance.
Thank you.
What's the bottom line break for the purple and the green there?
Right here.
Down.
The southern border, what's the southern border reference line?
Landfill.
Is that a lot, is it a row, certain row, what is that?
Could you get up and point to it, please?
This, right here,
Oh.
the bottoms of A, I'm assuming the green's A1?
Yeah, that's just the outline of it. So
That's Council Road?
it's
Okay.
probably a road, yeah.
Okay.
The city limits are the thick blue line right here.
So, okay. I know, thank you.
Swear to the mayor. Do you swear or otherwise affirm to tell the truth? Please say I do.
I do.
Would you please identify yourself?
Deborah Cotter. And I just have a clarification question.
Okay.
If I remember reading that the dispensary has to be, cannot be within a certain footage to a school system. And so when you're talking about the pharmacies, is Walgreens far enough away from the school that if you're permitting it there, it wouldn't interfere with the state regs?
So always bear in mind that state law supersedes local legislation and local zoning. Just because it might be permissible under our zoning ordinance doesn't mean that they can otherwise contravene state law. So if it's permitted within our zoning classification, that just means that they qualify locally. But if you're within 1,000 feet of a school, you're not going to qualify under state law. And I've got to think under any kind of licensing, they're going to require you to provide your physical address, and so you wouldn't get the license in the first place.
And the thing about that law is, so it's 1,000 feet from the schools and daycares, the state regulates both of those, so they should have a record of all of those. Now, this body could add on to that and add additional setbacks if it wanted to. I mean, personally, when I think of this stuff, I mean, this isn't recreation, this is medical. The only thing I care about is that it stays away from my kid. Schools and daycares pretty much take care of that.
And I just wanted clarification, so, okay, thank you.
Yeah, I would think any kind of setback insofar as a school or a daycare is concerned would be superfluous, because it's gonna be governed by, it's gonna be superseded by state law anyway, unless they were more restrictive.
Right, and I'm not even sure, and I'm talking about, this body could add one that says 500 feet from a church, because the state doesn't say anything about setbacks from churches. But, I mean, if you all want to add something like that, that's fine. But me personally, I care most about children, since I have a 10-year-old. So schools and daycares are gonna take care of most of that, I think. And I'm not even sure that. So there are two conditions with local municipalities regulating these through zoning and municipal codes. One, again, as Michael said, state law supersedes everything. It doesn't matter what the local municipalities do, state law trumps it all. And two, you have to, if you want to regulate it, you have to do it reasonably. You can't do what the municipalities here did with adult entertainment, which is basically strand it and I-1A light industrial zones to where technically it's possible, but it's never going to survive there and it's never going to go there. If you want to ban it, you have to. If you want to ban medical cannabis businesses, you have to pass something stating that. If you want to regulate it, you have to do it in a reasonable way, such that it's possible but not impossible. And making it more strict, I think, would potentially violate that. But that's more of a Michael question than a question for me. Do you all understand that?
So,
And I wasn't implying that,
Right. Yeah. Sure.
anyway.
so what will be the difference? I mean, I know one's medical and these smoke shops or whatever now aren't, but there's one in the Bluegrass Shopping Center. So is that far enough? I mean, how are they regulated? Those shops that you go in and get the CBD or whatever it is and all of that, I mean,
that's, for our purposes under the ordinance, it's just retail. That's
oh,
just.
really?
There's something chemically different in between.
But I think those are the ones that anybody can walk in and just get stuff, and
That-
these are gonna be, from what I understand over in Ohio, I mean, you've got to have a card, you've got to get in the door. Nobody can just walk in those places and then we've got these other places selling stuff that I don't even know.
Well, I think the difference is that the CBD type stuff is chemically, there's a level of distinction between that substance and the medical grade marijuana product that gets sold by virtue of a prescription. And so
Yes.
that's just, like George said, plain
Yeah.
old retail.
Yeah,
These are much more highly regulated
yeah,
from the state level.
yeah.
So one thing to keep in mind, we're putting the framework in place of, once these businesses are licensed, where they can go. There's not gonna be one of these on every street corner.
Right, I know.
There's gonna be, this is going to be a very tightly regulated industry, and there are going to be a very limited number of dispensaries in this area. And we just gotta tell them where they can go. Whereas I think if you got a CBD shop, you can go pretty much anywhere.
Yeah, and I think anybody can go in and out of them, and so to me, this is kind of better in a way because it is regulated and people just can't go in and out and buy whatever they want.
Can I ask another question?
Mhm.
So, could a dispensary be in Bluegrass Shopping Center, question mark?
I think it could be,
Okay, thanks.
were it far enough away
Okay,
from the school.
Thank you.
And it's not from the building, it's from the property.
I think that's right.
So 1,000 feet from their property, you're okay. If you're not, then you can.
I would, let's actually measure it here. So let's turn this off. So this is Blue Grass Shopping Center right here. So would it be property line to property line?
That's what, the way I read it was to the property line, not to the physical building.
So let's just do a rough calculation here.
Well, it's right next to it, so that wouldn't qualify.
Yeah, I mean, the football field's right behind.
Yeah.
Yeah, I would think it would be tough.
Questionable.
Kmart shopping center could probably be a dispensary, question mark?
It's
Just-
B2, yeah.
Yeah.
Any place where a pharmacy is permissible, any of your commercial zones,
Well, that's
D1 downtown business, that would be downtown Maysville
Okay.
and downtown
But if the
Washington.
church at the old 84 lumber was running a daycare, then it probably would.
Yeah, so, and it's up to the applicants to figure this stuff out.
Right,
Like,
yeah.
there's a map.
I
that goes
know.
by it.
I know that.
So roughly speaking, the school complex is about 1,000 feet away from Blue Grass Shopping Center. So it might be, but this is just an approximate.
Is there any other questions? Go ahead.
Bill Marshall, Key Pike.
Do you swear otherwise affirm to tell the truth?
I
You
do.
say I do. Okay.
So if I want to stop one of these, can I set up a daycare center for 3 kids and block it?
Well, you would have to go through the state.
I don't want to, but I'm just,
I mean, I suppose that's possible.
okay.
But I mean, you would have to pick a place that, daycares are conditional in a lot of places, and you'd have to go through the state for permission to run
And I
that.
think there's a concept in the law called moving to the nuisance. So if one of these places gets established, I don't know that you'd be able to open up a daycare and therefore put them out of business.
Okay.
Any other questions?
Does anyone have any more questions about these zoning classifications? Because I would imagine I deal with these every day, but I would imagine anybody who doesn't, they don't know what these numbers and others.
Why don't you just go down through them there?
Okay, so R1 is single family residential. That would be pretty much anything that's blue. There's R1 A, B, C, and D. So any of these big blue swaths, those are R1 zones. R2 are duplexes. We don't really have any R2. R3 is multifamily. We don't have a lot of that. There are these brown zones right here. Am I going too fast?
No.
She turned the light off.
I'm sorry.
So the brown is that R3?
Yeah, that's R3, that's multifamily. R4 is pretty much all this green down here at the bottom of the hill. That's Old Town residential. Now, it's noteworthy that I changed the conditional for dispensaries to prohibited. Most retail and service land uses are conditional there. Because of the regulations, I just don't think that most properties down there would even be possible to have a dispensary, and I think that's one of the places that would be the most objectionable, so I figure since they'd be permitted in the white zones there, the D1 downtown business in downtown Maysville, and there's a mix of B1, on Forest Avenue, over here, out on the outskirts of downtown, and over here, that the downtown Maysville and at the bottom of the hill would be adequately served by dispensaries. TH1, they're townhomes. We have a few locations that have those right here, Purple, and then Lon Watson's development out here in Old Washington. B1 is general business. Those are your commercial zone. That's your commercial zone for most places that aren't major highway or major arteries. So they would be along 11 right here, Forest Avenue. Over here is where the IGA is. Let's see, there's some up here by the new bridge. B2 highway business, that's your big commercial zones, Walmart, Kroger, pretty much commercial along highways, that's what that is. B3 is neighborhood business, we don't have a whole lot of that. I'm not sure why this is zoned, this is where the new entertainment place is, and this is where the Mexican restaurant is going up the hill. It's not really the appropriate place for it, I'm not sure why it's zoned out, to be honest with you.
Okay, so what is it?
B3 is neighborhood business.
D1.
D1 is downtown business, that's
Okay.
downtown
Okay, I'm
Maysville,
sorry.
that's the white right there, and there's a similar location there on
Let's go back
Washington.
to that brown ship point where the, right there.
Right here?
Yeah.
That's a little bit of multifamily right there.
Right.
Yeah.
And that's classified as what?
That brown's multifamily? I
Which
know
is-
it's hard to see.
That's that housing
Right.
spot right across from the old Hex building,
Gotcha.
going up Bank Street.
P1 is professional office. I don't think we have any P1. It's just there in case we get some. That's pretty much where your office buildings would be. A1, of course, is all that green. That's the growth areas for the city, on the outskirts of the city. Agricultural transition. A2 is most of the county, unincorporated areas of the county, everything that's not colored out in the county. All this, that's your A2, that's your agricultural. I1 is your light industrial. The larger I1A is right here. This is the cluster of I1A where we have Industrial Park Drive off the AA. And your light industrial I1B is, most of it's down here in the east end, it's this gray. I2 is your heavy industrial. You got your smaller stuff, which is orange right here in the east end. This is not colored correctly, but Industrial Park 4 is our I2A for heavy industrial. MH is mobile homes. We've got one spot. It's right here. This trailer park right here. C is your rural communities. Those are your Mays Licks, Orangeburg, these yellow clusters. That's Lewisburg right there, Mays Lick. That's your mixed-use zone serving the surrounding farmland. RR1 and RR2, those are your rural residential. I think they're underutilized, to be honest with you. This is the most prominent one right here, this reddish blue. I think that's it. Let's see. Yeah, that's RR1. Above it's RR2, the purple right there. And then I3 is your rural industrial. That usually isn't idly created, that's usually created for a specific instance. It's this brown right here. There's more of it up here, yeah. Any questions?
Good.
There's actually one change I propose to make after speaking about it. The safety compliance facility in C rural communities, I think that should be prohibited, because that's a mixed-use zone, and those need to be locked, those need to be closed off from the public, so I don't think that's appropriate there. So those, again, safety compliance facilities would only be possible in P1 professional office and then the industrial areas. I don't think they should be in mixed-use zones or commercial zones because they have to be locked and not accessible by the public. Do y'all have any questions? Does anybody have any questions?
Do I have a motion to go back into, close the public hearing, and go back into regular session?
So moved.
John? Leslie? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Okay, we're back in regular. Any further questions?
I didn't have any business voting. I don't know
You'll
what.
get to vote on this.
Nope.
on this one.
Sorry about that.
Is there any further questions of George or Michael? On the proposal?
I mean, do you all want to talk about the original proposal? Do you think that there's stuff that should have stayed the way it was, or are you happy with my proposed edits, including the one I just made?
From what I
And
read,
again, what was your last edit? I'm sorry.
On C, rural community, making safety compliance facilities prohibited instead of permitted. And that's because C is a mixed-use area for those unincorporated communities. And safety compliance facilities, just like cultivators, processors, and producers, are required to be closed off from the public. The public cannot access them. So putting them in a mixed-use zone is kind of problematic. Especially since, when I think of mixed-use zones, I think mostly of downtown Maysville, where there might be retail on the bottom floor and then other land uses above it. Originally, I had proposed that you could maybe be a cultivator in downtown Maysville, for example, because somebody asked about that. Well, if you have a store on the bottom floor open to the public, but then on the second and third floors, you want to grow and it's required to be completely cut off from the public, that's problematic. So I think that, it should just be, you might not have as much of a problem with that in C, but it's still a mixed use zone. I think it should be prohibited. If you all have any issues with these proposals and the changes, by all means, talk it out, ask questions. And we can make further amendments even after, assuming you all recommend this and assuming that the city and the county pass it, we can still make subsequent changes, especially between now and the end of the year. This is just the basic frame. Yeah.
Any further questions, comments? Hearing none, do I have a motion to accept what George has proposed as land use amendment?
I make a motion, we accept it.
I'll second that.
Okay. You want to do a voice vote?
Yeah. All right. So voting aye would be to.
Hang on, just one second. Is your proposal to accept George's recommendation with his amendment?
With the amendment. sure.
So the amended version you all got tonight with the amendment that he made orally just a few minutes ago? Regarding just the one individual change on safety compliance
Yeah, that's.
being prohibited
Community.
in community.
Sure.
So we're approving the amendment to the amendment.
Yeah. So the tonight's proposal plus the amendment.
Yes.
Yes.
Cool. All right, so voting aye would be to support that motion, and voting nay would be to deny. John Hudson,
Yes.
John Bess,
Yes.
Leslie Myers.
Yes.
Kirby Rosser. Okay, motion carried.
Next order of business, matter of record, HB 55 training certificates for John Hutchins, John Best, Leslie Myers, Dave Reed, Kirby Rosser, Lindsay Phillips, Rick Lawrence, and Gerald Williams.
All right, somewhere here I've lost them. I have all of your alls. They're somewhere here. But anyway, I have all of your training certificates, and I would like to make them a matter of record. If any of you would like your original copies, you can have them, or a copy.
So I need a motion to accept that into the matter of record. John, do I have a second?
Second.
All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Good.
George, I'd like to get a copy of that.
Okay.
Just email it to me, that would be fine.
I've got a printed copy here. I just don't want it there.
Comprehensive plan update.
I don't have any updates for you. The meetings are ongoing. It should be pretty much over and done with by the end of next week.
Transportation is the 29th. isn't it?
Yeah. Actually, my first meeting for Parks and Rec is tomorrow morning, and then we're gonna have the second meeting next week.
Ag land use that should be our last one.
Yep, moving right along.
All right. Any other business? Do I have a motion to adjourn? Do I have a second?
Yes, sir.
Irving, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? We're adjourned.